Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous, and here's her story. Dear Ollie, please keep me anonymous. My parents just showed up at my house tonight, out of the blue, after one exact year of no contact on my part. I believe it was ironically January 14th of 2018 when I began my new chapter of life, so I believe I will start my first video there. I say no contact because there is no good term for I have no wishes to speak to them ever again and I have not contacted them. But they randomly contact me because I've stood up to them finally. It's been really silent for the majority of the year. This is because, one, they live in denial, and admitting something is wrong would be them admitting they've done something wrong, and we all know they won't do that. Two, I'm a forgotten child, and it's probably been easy for them to slip past a month or three and realize they have not checked in to prod me in a while. Ain't that some shit? When you ghost and they don't even realize it takes a while for them to realize. That's how you know, when they don't even realize it. It's like, oh, you didn't realize I haven't talked to you in 4 months? Okay, that's why I haven't talked to you in 4 months. And finally, three, they play the anger card when they are so hurt and pitiful that their daughter won't talk to them. The list could go on with these people, but we will stop there for time and sanity's sake. Last January, I had been reeling and toiling close to 6 months with a ton of thoughts and emotions in my head that didn't make a lot of sense. It was sheer hell and torture on my mind and emotions. I had enough of the mindfuckery and turned to YouTube and typed in a few key phrases as to how I was feeling, and narcissism popped up. Narcissism wasn't a new concept for me. For the past few years, my dad had been ranting about how his sister was a narcissist and how horrible she was. We did all kinds of research about her traits, and sure enough, it fit her well. We had always just thought she was a major bitch, but to now have a name for her made perfect sense. He and his sister were about to explode on the settlement of their parents' estate and the horrible way they got to choose how my grandmother with Alzheimer's would spend her last days. It was sickening to hear all the things my dad was saying about my aunt and what she was doing to my poor grandmother, and how my dad was helpless in the whole situation because his sister had power of attorney over her, their mother. He was telling us that my aunt wasn't seeking out pain meds for my grandmother's last days, etc., and so much more that I don't want to relive. The final straw was when he told us that the nursing home, my aunt accused my dad of massaging my dying grandmother's leg inappropriately, and he got into an argument at the nursing home right there in front of my grandmother over it. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like your father and his sister sounds exactly like my father and his sister Adrienne. Two narcissists fighting for control. Two narcissists fighting for control, and that's the situation I dealt with in my family, at least on that end. And I think it's the same thing. You got two narcs trying to get one over on each other. For what? For power, for money, for control. I live around 9 hours from the nursing home and 6 from my parents' home. But when I heard that, I jumped in my car, left my kids with my husband, and hurried to the nursing home. I was livid. Now, I'll go ahead and say I was severely codependent when I did this, and that it was 7-ish months before I went no contact. I had several reasons for doing this. I knew my grandmother was going to die, and I hoped me being there would keep the two of her kids from brawling in front of her as she died. Nope. I also was harboring huge denial that my guns were blazing for my father. I wanted to be there with him because I felt sorry for him. I wanted him to be proud of me for coming to his side. I was a typical flying monkey. He even used me to go toe-to-toe with my narc aunt, telling me that I needed to go in there and take up for him. I did, and now looking back, I realized I was used. I now know he never humbled himself or took the high road with her. That's exactly what narcissists do, because it's two narcs in competition with each other, and you're the pawn. So he's using you as a soldier, whereas my father and Adrian, they would compete over my mother. There was that. Me and my cousin, me and my brother versus my cousin Dwayne and Richie. Like, why were it better? For some reason, Heather never factored into that, which was their youngest sister, who's one of the few cousins I actually miss because she got me, I got her. So, unfortunately, things change when It didn't take long for me to see that two bullheaded people wouldn't drop their ego, call a truce for the sake of peace of their mother. I spoke with my mom one night about it, and we cried, and I told her that my grandmother should have medically passed away days before, but was hanging on for her kids to make peace before she left. I told this to my dad, and you should have seen the look of shock on his face. He had no clue I would blow the whistle on his bullshit that night, so he started rambling up some reasons why he couldn't do that, and none of it made any sense, because he's just in competition. It's two narcs in competition. It was a silent light bulb for me. I took that info and stuffed it in my file of family crazy and kept my senses for the duration of my time at the nursing home. My dad left, and the next day he said he wouldn't be back until after she died because he knew she would pass and go on and pass if he wasn't there. Insert eye roll here. She did pass that night, only after my aunt whispered to her that she was going to try and make peace with her brother. I saw her pass, and it was something I'll never forget. I felt so sorry for her. She died horribly. They squabbled over her pain meds and her care. My aunt didn't put her on hospice care and just let the nursing home do the final transactions for her health and comfort. My aunt loved controlling the staff there, and it was obvious. The funeral was a shit show, as you can imagine. We split as a family completely that day. My aunt and her kids and my dad and us. We still took his side of it all, but that doesn't even matter because we're losing that side of my toxic family. Losing that side of my toxic family needed to happen anyway. This is what yeah, exactly. There's no sides to take. There are no sides to take when it's two narcissists. My aunt and uncle are both narcissists. My uncle has got to be the kin to meet Normus. I swear, when you talk about him, I think of my uncle. Well, when I hear this situation, I think of meet Normus, and so I'm glad we're kind of on the same page. He's a swindler who's obviously a closet gay. I've called him out for years. He's retired, but went to being a traveling salesman. He posts Bible scriptures on his Facebook photos of his travels, but I guarantee he's making a homosexual relationship across the country. They have plenty of money between the many people they've swindled in their business and both sides of the family's estates. I know they got a huge chunk of change from both a lawsuit they won from years ago on his side of the family. Their 3 kids, my cousins, are either narcissists or puppets, and I'm better off not knowing them anymore. They showed their true colors as well. The months that followed included Thanksgiving and Christmas. We drove up to visit at Christmas, and Dad was straight up off his rocker, ranting and talking shit about my estranged brother and how my mom is mean to him. So you already have a brother who said enough of this. I had to hear all that during Christmas, and it felt completely ruined. I just sat silently on the couch while he ranted about my brother and how he was a sorry piece of shit. I just wanted to get back to my home, far away from them. I didn't know then what was the last time that would be the last time I would see them. They always rant. When one of them breaks away, the narcissist always freaks out when they lose one of their game pawns. Okay? And that's all your brother was, and that's all you are, is a game pawn. You're a game pawn in the game that the two narcissists are playing, a narcissistic chess game between him and his sister. Just like me and my brother were pawns, and my mother were pawns. In the narcissistic game, my father played with his sister, the oldest sister, not older than him, just the oldest sister. I had been having trouble with insomnia since that summer. In January, it got worse. I couldn't sleep without my grandmother's quilt tightly wrapped around my body at night. My thoughts would race, and even if I didn't fall asleep, I would jerk and twitch myself awake. It's a horrible way to live when your anxiety won't let you sleep. A week or so later, I decided to take my Christmas decorations down and came across a cap my grandmother knitted while she had Alzheimer's. It was one of the many crafts they gave her to keep her busy and feeling like she was accomplishing things as her disease progressed. I cried holding the cap because I felt sorry for her all over again and what she had to go through. Then, as if she placed her hand on my shoulder from behind, I felt like she was telling me to stop crying and told me that it wasn't my burden to carry. She carried it her whole life, and it wasn't my place to carry it. My grandfather was an alcoholic and narcissist, and she was a quiet lady who put up with it all. She had said her mother told her once she got married, she made her own bed and had a lie in it, so she stayed. Now, I know we can go into how she's probably a narcissist herself and an enabler, but I just want to remember her the way she was. I've heard he would get drunk and beat her and ran around on her. I just know times were different back then, and she either was just as bad as him or didn't have the resources to leave. At this point, it doesn't matter. Together, she and her husband created two narcissists. That's all I need to know about her past. I feel in my bones she did in some way comfort me that day. I found the strength that day. It's like all the denial fell off me. I scoured the internet and YouTube and pinpointed my dad as a narcissist. When I realized what he was and the things he had done to me and my family, I had no desire to speak to him. I felt icky even to think about talking to him. I have always hated fake stuff and being fake, and I just knew I would have to be fake around him, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I read about the gray rock method and tried that on him. He and I had gotten close the past years or so since he had retired and my brother had estranged. I was the new golden child. And didn't even realize it. Well, you're his new main game pawn. I knew for once I loved the attention I was getting. I loved how he doted on me. I loved how he called and talked to me. I didn't realize that I loved it because it was a new concept for me. Right, he was just giving you supply you never had because your brother wasn't around. But the second you don't give him your way, gone, and he shows you what you really think. That's why it went 4 months before he realized he hadn't even talked to you. He has been free with money as well. He's given us nice sums for no reason whatsoever the past year or so, and it felt nice to receive that from him. They were always tight with money growing up, so I never asked for money growing up. I didn't want to be a burden on them. They always talked about my brother costing them money and how he was wasteful, and I learned from that I needed to be a better child than my brother and not put a strain on them. In fact, I learned from my brother's mistakes, from the rants that went on in all aspects of my growing up. I stayed hidden in the shadows of the family. My brother was their star and I was their fat child they would hardly pay any attention to. If they did pay attention, it was to criticize me. My dad made fun of my weight as a teenager, calling me his little fat girl. He had a playful way of interacting with me, whether it be mean or nice. I now know I was treated like a pet, how someone would treat a puppy dog. The interactions were the same. It wasn't anything new. My weight had been a topic of their discussion since I was around 6. That is another video, though. I'm trying to focus on my no contact, but I want to do a video about my childhood next, so I'm trying to give detail of how I was the forgotten child for the sake of my no contact this past year has gone. Back to gray rocking on my dad. I tried to gray rock him. He called me out on it. He knew what I was doing because we had done all that research on my aunt. He texted, "Why are you gray rocking me?" I knew I had to tell him something so he would leave me alone. I gathered up all the courage and had wrote him back that our contact would be very limited until he got himself some help, and then proceeded to question me on what I thought he needed to see a shrink about and what kind of doctor did he need to see. I saw right through his mind games. I was a gray rock and told him he would have to do all that for himself and discuss that with his doctor. I have not talked to him since. Now I was wondering if I would hear from my mom. Deep down, I knew she would take his side and not call me to see what was wrong, but I still hoped she would call me that day. Would she call to ask me what made me go and write that out of the blue to my dad? I hoped she would call, but she didn't. No, of course not. She already knows. They know why you left. Same reason why your brother left. She didn't, and he didn't so much as text me for the next month. I fell deep into studying about narcissism. I wanted to know all about this and what was going on in my family. I wanted to know how to handle all of it. It was so raw and so uncomfortable. I never thought I would be doing that and doing any of that. I would wake up each day and ask myself, is this really my life? I thought my family and I were close and things were good. I was in such denial and brainwashed for so long. I knew deep down my family was a mess, but it didn't come into focus until I had a family of my own and realized how happy I truly was with them. And I realized I was a sad, lonely child growing up. I researched constantly, I listened to videos, and realized I was too weak to speak to them for a while. My mom finally did call in February around Valentine's Day. I was loading groceries in my car and missed her call. I thought myself lucky that God kept me from having to decide whether or not to answer it. I knew by not calling her or texting her for a month that my dad had plenty of time to coach her on how rotten I was and what to say to her and what to say to me. I knew she would twist it around and make me feel sorry for him, and I couldn't deal with that. I knew about hoovering at this time, and I knew it was a trap. I believe she called again a week later, and as luck would have it, I missed her call again and didn't call her back. She had sent my kids a Valentine card and some gift cards by mail that month. I just wanted to note that bit of contact. Months rolled by. Mother's Day was around the corner. I had to listen to a video. I had listened to a video that told me the narcissist would pop up and ruin Mother's Day, so I knew it was coming. Sure enough, the next day, after I didn't contact my mom, he finally texted me and my brother that we should be ashamed for not calling our mom on Mother's Day because she's such a good lady and we know her heart and we needed to put the blame on him, not her. It was sickening because I remember him gaslighting her when I was around, telling her that it was her fault he didn't have a relationship with his son. So now I know he's told her this too is her fault. I saw his shame for what it was and didn't answer him back. I blocked his number that day. I talked to my brother and he was not shocked as well. He had been no contact from them for a couple years, and although Dad never did that to him before now, it didn't surprise him. My brother was no contact because my family didn't like his narcissist wife. My dad hated her, my mom loathed her. I now know this is because they couldn't stand her having control over him. That situation blew up a couple Thanksgivings ago. My brother even had been contacted by a nasty email from my mom saying he was basically a piece of shit and out of the will. I know. I laugh every time I hear a video you do about narcissists and their wills. Yep. Like, of course you're out. It's all about power and control. And this is why your brother left. Now, I don't know if his wife's a narcissist or not. She might be. But again, it's over the loss of power. They're so focused on him, his whole life and your whole life, they never even paid attention to you. My brother just said to me he was tired of my dad's bullshit, criticizing and bullying, and my mom was brainwashed and he didn't want to be around them anymore. He was on the verge of a divorce from his wife, and so we got close throughout the better part of 2018. We had not talked much over the past 7 years. I was busy being a mom and he was busy with his family, so we talked once in a while but didn't keep good contact. We've never been like a close brother and sister. It's been a complicated relationship between he and I. I've always felt like I was his caretaker. He's always been out of control but has seemingly done really well with his wife now. Little did I know how wrong I was. More on that later, though. After the Mother's Day shaming, I wrote my mom a text message and told her that I loved her and hated how things were, but there was so much she didn't know and didn't realize. I told her if she wanted to come down here and talk to me face to face or even go to my therapist with me, she could. Mistake. She told me she would call and we could talk talk later on when my kids were in bed. We talked and I told her many things. I told her about the work I'd been doing. I told her about what I thought of Dad. All of this is going to be twisted and used against you. All of it. I told her how I had been following a life coach and she explained how Dad was a narcissist and a child of an alcoholic. I reminded her all of the dysfunction on her side of the family and how she had to know that all that dysfunction was passed down and we needed to do something about it. Good luck. I reminded her of the time she told me she had thought Dad was cheating on her and how I now had some info that didn't make sense back then, but now did, and I would bet money did in fact cheat on her. I told her how I tried to kill myself at 12 years old because of how lonely I was and how I was abused by school bullies and at home as well. I told her how my brother molested me and how he tortured me mentally and physically as a child. And now you're having a relationship? Have you talked about that with your brother? She acted surprised by that and asked me why I never told her and how she's always told me to tell her if anyone ever touched me. She never once told me she was sorry, though. Well, it would explain your weight as well. She told me that she was furious with my brother and she wanted to punch him in the face. I told her not to tell him. I told her about this and that he's in a good place in his life, and I didn't want her to do that. I knew deep down he would either deny it or go crazy for me telling. The rest of everything I told her, she either gaslit me on or told me I had a selective memory. We hung up that night and I felt worse than before. That's why you don't do it. That's why. I felt like I had been talking to my dad the whole time and not her. She was in deep solidarity with him from the moment we talked. She used phrases like we and us and she never used she or her. She did admit they had failed us as parents. It was the weirdest call. I realized that the individual I thought was my mother was in fact an extension of my father. She's more like his arm or leg than her own person. I knew she was ticking through my discussion to chop it down and get it out of the way so we could bury it again and go about like nothing ever happened. A couple days later, she called me like nothing was wrong. She said she and my dad had talked to an older lady who gave them some advice she had used raising her own kids, and when I had time, she would tell me about it. I was short with her that day because my kids were with me, but in the meantime, after I spoke with her after Mother's Day, I had made up my mind to keep going with the no contact. It just felt like she was too eager to sweep everything under the rug, and I was not about to do that after all the strides to a mentally healthy life I had made. June rolled around and I had not talked to them since the day she told me about the conversation with the old lady. Both of my kids' birthdays are in June. She texted me while we were on vacation the day before my youngest son's birthday and asked me if my dad could call and talk to the boys the next day. I was floored. This was the first time they had asked about my kids by text or phone at all, besides the night we spoke on the phone. I replied to her nicely but firmly that I didn't think it was a good idea and that I didn't want to confuse them. I didn't feel good about opening up to them, speaking to someone who hadn't wanted to speak to them in 6 months. They had made little effort to contact them until now. I told her she hadn't finished talking things out back in May and she could call me the next week and we could talk about things. I even gave her my schedule the next week and told her to call when she could. She didn't even text me back. Because she don't care about the kids. They care about their control. Your kids are just more pawns to them. August, Mom called the first week of August just to say hi. I answered because I wanted to be true to my word that we would talk about things like I asked her to in June, but she didn't initiate, so I didn't either. I knew by this call they still wanted to sweep everything under the rug and act like nothing was wrong. I just couldn't do that. They seemed as though they wanted us to just come back around and act like nothing happened. No words, no explaining. I bet they would have just picked up where they left off had we just went back up there and visited. I was just floored at their dysfunction. Her birthday was at the end of the month, and I made the decision out of principle of not acting fake and acting like nothing was wrong. That I was not calling her or sending her a card. I felt so easy about this because of how my dad popped up and shamed me the last time. But I kept strong and went on about my life. My nerves had been bad since June because I was worried where they would pop up next. I heard nothing in September and nothing in October from them. This summer, I found out my brother had been seeing a married lady for over a year, even when he was married to his ex. He asked her to come to the beach with him while we were all on vacation in June. While there, he got drunk and got into a rage at her one night. His friend was also staying in the room with them. His friend told me that my brother had been awful to the girl. I was shocked. I was scared because this was the old brother coming out. I believed he was now older and grown out of that behavior. It bothered me for months. Well, obviously it didn't. So obviously he needs to go too, because he's going to turn on you. He's going to turn on you next. His girlfriend called me out of the blue one day in September and asked me questions about my kids and what was normal kid behavior. She told me how he was being hard on her to spank her kids and keep them in line. I told her not to listen to him and that he was raised by a family and how dysfunctional we were growing up. I told her that her daughters, who were both under the age of 3, were acting like normal 3-year-olds. She also told me that he had laid hands on her and choked her one evening. She said that they were working all of it out, and he said he would go to therapy with her. I was worried for her and the kids, but didn't know how to tell her to leave and didn't know how not to insert myself into the issue. Well, she called you, so she already inserted you into the issue. I knew that it was bad, but I knew I didn't need to be in the middle. I knew, too, that he would find someone else after her if she left, and I knew I couldn't warn everyone that came along. At what point does it end? All of his old girlfriends leaned on me from him being an asshole when he was in his 20s. I felt like all I ever had done is be the person of reason in his life. It's something even my parents had made me a part of since I can remember. I was tired of it. But I gave her one piece of advice. I told her not to put anyone over her girls and get out if he doesn't go to therapy or touched her again. The next month, the day before Halloween, my brother's best friend called me and told me that things had gotten bad and that my brother had been drinking and ranting at the girlfriend and acting entitled that she make him a sandwich because she didn't work. He said that he stood up for her and told my brother that he shouldn't talk to her that way. He got mad at his friend and started provoking him to fight. The girlfriend came between them and my brother threw her on the ground. His friend got his stuff to leave but checked on the girlfriend first. She was crying, rubbing her head. She got up and somehow he pushed her down again. At this point, she was unresponsive. My brother kicked his friend out and left, but called the cops on my brother because he was worried about the girl. My brother knew the cop that came, so he got away with the whole ordeal. Now him and his friend are not speaking. And why are you speaking to your brother? He's no better. When the friend finished telling me all this, he told me that he had called my parents and told them what happened, and my dad told him to call me, that I had always been able to get through to my brother. I finally became enraged by my parents. This is the only reason why they even want you around. To fix all their fucking problems. Because you're just a pawn to them. You're just a pawn to them. It was the final straw, and it was all I needed to hear to be able to let them go out of my life completely. I'm down here by myself, no family or close friends, in another state, and they throw that on me. I'm just trying to do what I can to be a good parent and work to raise good kids. But yet again, my alcoholic psycho brother is the problem. How dare they? It's their mess. He was created by them. You can look that shit up on how a sociopath is made. He is not my child and not my responsibility. I explained that to my brother's friend and told him that as of that day, my family was completely blocked, even my brother and his girlfriend. Good. My brother has always been abusive and will never change. He's a narcissist, and I was fooled by this past year, but not anymore. I learned my lesson with my brother too, so, okay? You can't lean on a golden child. You can't lean on a golden child. You can't lean on a narcissistic sibling to help you go no contact from your narcissistic parents. It's never going to work. Never. Never, 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 never. So with that, my husband and I blocked them all. Not that my parents had contacted me much, but now they couldn't do it at all anymore. I told my husband that my narcissistic father did that to get at me. He did that to show that he could get to me down here even though I had blocked him. That's just how his narcissistic mind worked. After that, my Facebook Messenger was blowing up with messages from my parents and brother. I deleted the app, so I have no idea what the messages said. I also saw where my mom called and left messages on my phone in the blocked messages tab on my phone. The very next day, I had blocked them all. She called multiple times and left messages over the next few weeks. They seriously thought they could hoover me using this situation with my brother as bait. They got a rude awakening when I couldn't be reached. I got a card in the mail right before Thanksgiving inviting me up for Thanksgiving at their house. Yeah, awesome. I wanted to respond with so many curse words, but held my composure and wrote, "No thank you," inside the card. Simple, but I hope they got the message that I didn't want to be bothered. I didn't hear anything at all on my birthday or even in December, and my birthday in December, and even Christmas. We even managed to get a trip up to visit my husband's family, and thankfully we didn't have to run into my family. I got a weird Christmas card from them a day or two after Christmas with some cryptic religious talk reference to a T. Graham Brown song called The Gift or something like that. I don't have the card and I'm not looking up the song, so I hope that's right. So stupid, I just rolled my eyes and tossed it. It kills me. They have acted like nothing's wrong and not even asked what is wrong or what we can do to work on things, because they know because they already know and they don't care. The narcissist already knows and doesn't care. They just want you back under their control. They have given zero fucks about my kids and have even resorted to calling my in-laws and playing poor pitiful me like we just wouldn't talk to them. Then my mom had to throw in at how they had been praying for us, like we were crackheads needing a prayer of change or something. They've given zero fucks. They have not texted before I blocked them November 1st. They have not written, called, or acted concerned at all. Normal people would try to get to the bottom of why their child wasn't talking to them. I even gave her a chance in June. They don't want to know. They already know, and they don't care. I even asked her to come talk to me with my therapist, which I forgot to say. My mom recommended I speak with a psychologist, not a therapist. She also said that the life coach was incredible, and even though she's been abused by a narcissist herself. Mom said the lady was too biased on the topic, and I needed to just go with a professional. So much stupidity, I can't even list it all. Like I said, she already knows, and they don't care. They just want you under control. I knew they had shown up at my brother's house unannounced this summer before all that happened with his girlfriend in October, back when he and I were talking. I knew it was going to happen to me, even though my husband said they wouldn't come down here. I had a weird feeling today that they would come. I don't know why. I just felt it in my gut they would. My husband was working today, but luckily got off early, so when he answered the door, my mom and dad were standing there. He was there to take care of it for me. I'm 7 weeks pregnant right now. Had I not been, I would have gotten up and told them to leave and go take care of the alcoholic son they made. But I didn't. My heart was racing and I felt the adrenaline in my system. I hated them for it because I'm giving all that stress to my baby. Thank God my kids were in the other room. Had my 7-year-old seen them, he would have ran out and not understood when we took them back inside. He's dealt with it hard. My 3-year-old was only 2 the last time he saw them, and he's not dealing with it at all. I'm just glad my husband put them on the road for me. He told them they had their chance to talk and they didn't take it back in June, not to mention all the other months. They all had big smiles on their faces, but he wiped them right off their faces when he told them that. He couldn't believe they just showed up smiling like he would let them in. I asked him if he could understand what we were dealing with now. He got a piece of the crazy, but thank goodness he was here for us. I don't know what is going to happen next. I just want to be left alone. What's going to happen next is your husband's going to be blamed for brainwashing you. That's what's going to happen. This is all because it can't be them. Now it's going to be blamed on your husband. He's going to become the scapegoat now. I know with the word of a new baby, they may pull something. I'm trying to keep it a secret as long as possible. I just want to have a drama-free, happy life. My kids are great. My son is in the gifted class, and my 3-year-old is so happy and vibrant. It's because of them being happy I realized I wasn't a happy child. It's because of them I broke free of the brain fog I had been placed in since birth. I have more backstories to come. I'd love to tell my whole story and maybe help someone, as others have helped me on this channel and YouTube in general. Until then, thanks so much for reading my story of no contact thus far. I'm looking forward to hearing your words of true wisdom. Ollie, you're truly gifted and spot on when hearing these stories. It just amazes me. Keep up the good work. The anonymous forgotten child. Well, your parents are well aware of what the issues are. They don't need it explained. No narcissist ever does. The narcissist knows why you went no contact. They just don't care. The narcissist doesn't care why you went no contact. The narcissist only cares about control and using you as a pawn. Period. I'm glad your husband was there to step up, because that's what I usually recommend, that the husband needs to step up and be the wall. He's going to be blamed going forward. And I'm glad you've cut your brother out, because when you said the molestation and I'm like, why is she doing this? I'm glad you finally came to your senses and that realization as well. So I hope that helps. Thank you for your story and your contribution, Anonymous. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comments section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been The Narcissistic Resistance.